limitless on the mic, talking life and what's alike. Middle age, it's quite the ride, finding joy and chasing pride. Career dreams and daily grind, funny moments that we find. Letting go of yesterday, making paths along the way. Middle age.
Hi, Tim.
Hello. How are you, Trav?
I'm so excited to be here. You?
I feel the exact same way.
Welcome everybody to episode 2 of season 2 of the Tim and Trav podcast. For those who are just joining us for the first time, and a reminder for people who've been here before, the Tim and Trav podcast is basically about life in our 40s and transitions and everything in between. And this season in particular, season 2, we're focusing on unique passions and activities. I'm almost referring to them to potential guests as like adult extracurriculars.
I like that.
That shouldn't stop when you're a kid, right? So we have a really good guest today, Robin Laird. We just recorded her not too long ago, so we're excited to get into that. But first, Tim, do you want to talk about are we calling this segment anything? Like, we have it in our little sheet as couples card game, which seems a little weird.
Can you repeat that? Because I started laughing when you said it. I just want to make sure everybody heard the way that. And just FYI, you were the one who created the majority of the spreadsheet, so you labeled it couples card game.
I did, yes. I don't know why.
I don't want to take any credit for that or blame, however you want to look at it.
You know, sometimes you just got to float things out there.
Well, I think it's actually a nice way that you have identified this, and maybe somebody will listen and take it back to their partner and try to do the same thing, ask the same question. That could be kind of cool.
For sure. And just to be clear, I do love you, but you're not my partner.
You. I love you too. Thank you for clarifying.
Wow, I've been waiting my whole life to hear that.
All right, let me ask you the question first, Trav. So today's question is favorite vacation of all times. What do you got?
So I'm struggling to come up with just one, but I'm going to because I talk too much. But I will say one of the first things that came to mind is this pre-kid or post-kid? Because I feel like our vacations have changed a little bit since having kids. The focus is just a little different. It's just a different experience in general. I'm going to go with one of our more recent ones. We're very lucky we get to travel, and my wife is a huge traveler, so she gets the travel bug. She can't be tied down for too long. So we went to Estes Park just outside of Denver not too long ago. Showed the kids the Rocky Mountain National Park. I have a family connection to that area. Our family used to own a cabin up there in the woods, and it's kind of gone in and out of family ownership it's basically in the national park.
Wow.
So it holds a special place to me because it has a lot of memories in terms of stories from when I was younger and all that. But it's also, in my opinion, one of the best places to go fly fishing, and my son now is a really good fly fisher, so that was a lot of fun. We took a guide. We went into Rocky Mountain National Park. We had some really great weather. We stayed in a great Airbnb right along one of the rivers there, and it just could not have been a better trip for the family. So I went the family route, Estes Park. Don't inundate it too much, folks, but it's a great place. So that was
cool, man. You said Colorado?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
That sounds like a great experience. So you probably spent the majority of the time outside.
Yes, exactly, which is one of the reasons I loved it. And I love Rocky Mountain National Park. For those of you who've not been, it's really great.
That is so cool, man. I would love to talk to you more about fly fishing at some point. That sounds like a really neat thing to try. I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than I'm assuming.
I think you'd be really good at it, actually.
Because I have long arms?
Your affinity for patience, and I think you'd be a pretty good waiter. You got to be out there in the river for a while. I think you'd be pretty good at that.
Yeah, I was wondering, can you talk while you're standing out there, or does that scare the fish away?
So I've recently learned in my age at this point, it was kind of funny that I've learned this. Fish can't actually hear you. So
Really?
yeah, they're more disturbed by so all those guys out there, kids out there who have been told to be quiet while they were fishing from their dads. Either their dad was misinformed or they're just really tired of hearing your crap. So no, fish actually respond more to like the movement of your body in the water and the kicking up of rocks and stuff like that. So no, don't necessarily, like, I talk to people while we're out there and stuff. So.
Yeah. No, that's great, man. I would love to do that with you at some point. That sounds really cool.
Maybe we'll do a Riverside episode.
That'd be amazing. From the river. So, Trav, great example. Thank you. I, like you, really wrestled with, gosh, we've been so blessed, right? I mean, so many opportunities to see different parts of the world and meet incredible people. And then, when it all kind of was said and done, I realized that I don't really even remember much beyond the past 2 years. So I'm going to have to go with something in that window.
Are you talking about vacations or just life in general?
Well, a little of both, Trav. We can get into that on another episode. But so 2 years ago, my family and I went to Ireland, and we rented a car. We flew into Dublin, flew out of Shannon. Or you know what? Maybe we flew out of Dublin. I can't really actually remember at the point, but I had been there twice, once on my honeymoon and then once with the 3 kids. It was an awesome experience, man. We a lot of it was planned, which you kind of have to, right? When you've got 3 little kids and you need to keep them occupied, and you want to have a nice experience yourself too. But we were just driving around the country, being outdoors, seeing the sights, enjoying the pubs, enjoying the restaurants, like getting a heavy dose of culture. And it was just an amazing experience on so many levels to share that time with my kids and with Christy, of course. Like, I really, really cherish that time together, and would really, if somebody is able to pull that off, I would highly recommend it. It's a great country to visit.
Yeah, for sure. It's on my list.
Yeah,
for sure. And you said you've been there a couple times now?
Yeah, that was our second time. Yeah.
Okay.
So and it's doable too, right? I mean, it's not super far away. It's not a terrible flight. At some point, we should dedicate an episode. I will tell you about the catastrophe that occurred with our car rental. Within hours of getting in this car after an overnight flight, everybody's out of their minds. I had the engine smoking. It was an awful experience at the time, but an amazing one now.
Well,
so,
you have
great
to love
story.
when you can look back. Yeah,
great story. Yeah, I just made a huge mistake thinking that I could. Essentially, it was an issue of automatic versus manual.
Oh no!
Yeah, and it was just there were too many. It was too many things kind of compiled at one point in time, and I sort of lost my mind as everybody was freaking out. And then when smoke started to spew from the engine, we knew there was a problem. Dude,
that's amazing.
It was amazing. It was so funny. Don't let my kids tell you the story, because they'll just bash me to no end, which they have a right to do.
You know what, though? You're making memories, and that's the important part.
It was a great memory. It was a great memory. Yeah, it was very funny. So, all right. So cool, man. Two awesome experiences there. I like that question a lot too. I mean, we could even do that one again, because we've both been so lucky to see a few places. So
yeah, for sure.
So what do you got? Any listener comments?
No, not officially, only because this at the time of this recording, we haven't released season 2 yet. But
right.
I will say that a lot of people have asked. I think we're nearing the dozen mark of people who have asked, "Hey, when's season 2?" And how's it going? Blah blah blah. So, regardless of whether, folks, just so you know, regardless of whether you are an avid listener or an occasional listener, we do appreciate your comments. And if you have any comments, questions, ideas, anything like that, please send them to us at timandtravpodcast@gmail.com. It's timandtravpodcast@gmail.com. We do appreciate them. We read them all.
We do, yeah. Send us your favorite vacation spot. We'll read it. We'll share the news.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Also, cool. If you have an idea for a couples card game question, also known as icebreakers, anything like that. Tim, awesome wife moment?
Awesome wife moment, sure. So, we had a day recently. some days are just a little bit more challenging than others, right? I think we can both agree, right? And that's just part of being human. And then part of being a parent is that some days are exponentially more challenging than others, right? I mean, it's just, you just never know. I mean, my daughter had a classic meltdown last night for no reason, came out of nowhere. And it was, she just could not fall asleep, and the world was coming to an end, and, she just was screaming in her bed. And then this morning she woke up and she's so sweet and, laughing at the experience. Meanwhile, I was going to throw my head into the wall last night when she was, So I think that's just part of it's just real, right? It's just so real. So Christy recently, I think, was just like having one of those days, and the kids were, presenting their own challenges. I mean, we're very lucky. We've got amazing kids, but they're kids, and they act up, and that's just part of the way things go. So she was having one of those days, and at the end of it, she just sort of, came and we had sort of chatted about it, and she was like, this was just really complicated. I mean, this was just, maybe I wasn't on my best, like I didn't perform as well as I would have liked, or, things just like, if I could take it back. And I really admire anyone's ability, but in this moment, hers, to just honor the fact that things don't always work out or go as planned or are not as smooth as we would like. And you can do a couple things with that, right? I mean, you can pretend that it's just normal, pretend that it's going to get better, or, kind of just honor the fact that every once in a while, we're not as good as we would like to be either. And I really respect like her ability to acknowledge that. And I think I do this as well. I mean, I think we both like kind of use each other as a, like, just to kind of like balance it all out, right? Because there's certain days that are just crazy. And the other day she just was like, I wish that things would have been a bit better. And you talking through that is pretty helpful. Because, you're with your person who knows what that feels like. So I just really respect her, her recognition of reality, even in the moments that are tough. So, and
that's a skill in and of itself, is to not only recognize it but admit it outwardly, even if it is just to your person. That speaks a lot to her character. I think it also, for me, like in having been in those experiences before, it leads to a lot of growth, right? Because you're not going to get any better if you don't acknowledge it. So
that's why I'm so tall.
Oh, look at that! I mean, that's why I'm so short. That's very cool, and definitely honoring Kristen in that, or Christy in that, for sure. My awesome wife moment, you actually almost touched on it with your Ireland story. We were recently, I think I mentioned that we went skiing. I was going skiing for the first time. Obviously, when you go skiing, normally there is snow, or you hope there is. And we were driving, and it wasn't bad conditions by any stretch. It wasn't like hey, we should pull over, this is really dangerous. It was more just like this is less than ideal. The roads are a little bit like, like there's salt and we're good. It's fine. Slow down a little bit, keep it safe. And Kristen has this habit. I don't know if your cars came equipped with this. Luckily ours did not. But there's no passenger side brake pedal. And there's no reaction from the car physically when she touches the dashboard for the thousandth time.
That's good.
But if it were up to Kristen, there would be. Normally, it's not that big a deal. Normally, she's like totally fine. But when the weather is not great, she gets a little high anxiety when it comes to being in the passenger seat. And, obviously, we all want a fair amount of control. Even if it is a completely fine situation. But the awesome wife moment after that was we got to the lodge. I hadn't said anything really. And, it was totally fine, completely safe. And she was just like, I'm sure I was driving you nuts. But, it's just one of those things. You talk about acknowledging it, right? It's like I don't like driving in the snow. I don't love it. I felt like I'm sure I touched the dashboard 1,000 times, blah, blah. And it's not so much the apology as much as it is, and excuse me, and she didn't really owe me an apology, but it's just like one of those, she acknowledged it, and we can kind of joke about it rather
Yeah.
than it being like I am going to toss you out on the side of the road if you do not, slow down or whatever it is. So yeah, I'm sure it was not easy for her in terms of like, no control, no hand on the steering wheel, whatever. But it made me giggle because it was like, I'm sorry. I'm sure that was very annoying, but so there you go.
I think that's a great story. I love the way she handled that. I just think it's great. No, I think that's really, I have a lot of respect for that. Do you think you're a good driver?
I think everybody thinks they're a good driver, which is why I hesitate to answer that. I do think I usually err on the side of safety. So I don't drive fast. I don't get crazy. I don't do quick lane changes. I don't do anything like that. I also think too, in answering that question, the bar is lowering at a very rapid pace when it comes to people being good drivers. Like the number of people, we take a fair amount of road trips and stuff and go out on our own little adventures and things. The number of people I see on their phones, I'm just like, well, I'm definitely better than that. Like, at least I'm actually looking at the road.
Yeah.
I don't know. Are you a good driver? I
think I'm pretty good. Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. I sometimes probably go a little too fast. I actually got a ticket while driving back from Thanksgiving. Someone in Ohio, a couple weeks ago, they mailed me a ticket in the mail. They had a picture of my car going 70 something. I don't remember which township it was, but yeah, I was not happy about that.
You got caught on a camera?
Caught on a camera, yeah. I didn't get pulled over.
Yeah. Look at you, Jeff Gordon.
I would say so. I mean, that minivan, once you put the foot on the accelerator, it really takes off. I'm going to blame the van instead of me.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think overall, I'm a pretty decent driver. I did notice, however, just to your point, that at night, headlights are very severe now. Like they're blinding, and they're not even on brights, right? I mean, I don't know what's going on, but I can't see at times at night, and maybe
LEDs.
They're pretty significant. So
they're LEDs. Unfortunately, when my truck's fairly new, and when we got it, I drove it home from Columbus, and the number of people who were flashing their lights at me, and I was like, is this like this is a new truck? Like I don't know, like are my brights actually on? And I just am not familiar with it. Whatever. No, they're just that bright.
Oh wow, you weren't in the wrong lane.
Yeah, I was driving on the left side. Is that
you're driving into oncoming traffic?
Is that bad?
No, you're a good driver. Just remember that.
Yeah.
All right, man.
All
So
right.
let's jump. Something awesome.
Yeah. So we've talked about this before. I really appreciate good technology. And one of the things we touched on it in the last episode with the first responders and people helping of the wildfires. But one of the things in terms of tech that I thought was really cool is there's this app called Watch Duty.
Okay.
And it has allowed me to kind of keep tabs, if you will, on the various number of people all over the city of Los Angeles who I care very deeply about without having to actually bug them. Like, hey, are you in an evacuation area? Are you blah, blah, blah? I can literally, the Watch Duty, the app just allows you to see not only the containment, but where everything is. You can punch in somebody's address. You can see when you're in the middle of that, absolute hailstorm of crap, it's important to know that people care about you, but you don't necessarily need everybody and your brother texting you like, are you all right? Do you know what I mean?
Right, sure.
So I really like that's for a later time when you're not in the thick of it, I feel like. And I really appreciate the fact that there is such an accurate thing that not only from afar for me, I can actually monitor and see what's going on and, not bug people, but also people that are directly in it and are possibly in an evacuation area or are trying to monitor things, from being in it. It seems to be very quick. It seems to be really good. And, I appreciate when life and technology intersect in such a helpful way.
Right, but I just want to be clear. You don't have like access to their physical location by way of their phone, right? You're just looking at
No. I just know like where they work or where they live just because we're friends.
I see.
And so I can look up like, I feel like they lived kind of close to Glendale or whatever it is, I can go
Yeah.
look.
I guess that's fair. I mean, I was gonna try to refute what you had shared by saying, well, why don't you just watch the news? But
Yeah, this is quicker.
a little bit quicker, it sounds like, and probably a little bit more detailed and accurate.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, fair enough. So I'm not going to be able to offer a counter to that, but because I think in some areas technology what it's providing for us we already have, right? It's just doing it in a different way. So, but that's kind of interesting. That's kind of interesting. I don't know if I myself would use something like that, but I could see maybe why people would, and especially when you're thinking about all these people that you really care about.
Yeah.
So you make a good point. I'm actually going to hit on technology as well, and feel free to counter my. You ready?
Yeah.
So I think I bought this about a year ago. The Skylight calendar. Have you seen
I
that?
don't know what that is.
It's
No,
just
what
a
is it?
digital calendar. Plan.
Okay.
It's like a big tablet that sits in the corner of our kitchen. You can upload all your activities onto it.
Yeah.
I have found this thing to be incredibly helpful. I don't think it was cheap necessarily, and obviously there's other companies out there that are producing something similar. But I have really enjoyed this. The thing that I love most about it is that it's gotten me out of a lot of difficult moments where I just don't remember if what time is gymnastics starting tonight or something like that. And I can just go there. Previously, I probably would have texted Christy or called someone for help. But so those instances have decreased significantly. What I love about this thing, I have it on my phone as well. So when I go shopping, I can it creates shopping lists as well.
Ooh.
So I can I could be at work one day and think, oh man, I think we need butter. And pull out my phone real quickly, type in butter, and then a week later I'm at Costco. That's my Costco moment. Just sliding that in there.
So smooth.
And I'm walking through Costco with my phone out, probably looking like the fool that I am, crossing things off my list. But it's a great tool. It's been a great, resource for our family in terms of managing all the many different activities and, keeping all of us relatively sane. So, and you can put chores on there for the kids. The kids can, complete chores and cross off when they're done. We did that for a little while. Then it slipped, but I got to get back on that train.
So the kids can interact with it too?
Yeah. It's fully accessible. So
that's really cool. You know what? It's funny. I didn't realize that's what those were called. I've seen people have them before, and I've always been a little envious because I'm big on spreadsheets and calendars and such. But we might be in need of an upgrade. That's cool.
Yeah, we were on paper, and then this just made a lot more sense. So
yeah. Do you and Christy have a shared family calendar like on your phones?
No, we just use this thing now. Yeah.
Wow. You guys
at least I don't think we do.
If we do, I don't do it.
She's probably listening. When she listens to this, she's going to go, oh, what an idiot.
She doesn't listen to this.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Well, that's cool. It's called, what is it called? Skylight?
That's Skylight. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It's cool. Right. There's a lot out there, so that's just one of them.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this is a bad segue, but maybe they'll throw their hat in the ring. I'm curious, as this is normally where we would interject sponsors. Have you heard from anything on your Dyson community?
No, I haven't checked it in several weeks. So, and I don't think I set it up so that I would get an alert if somebody reached out. But, I'm thinking that that's probably unlikely.
I still have hope. I
have hope. I'm not losing hope, but
What's
it's going to take a long
again?
time. Tim, I don't know actually. We got to go back and
Timmy loves vacuums.
Yeah, something like that.
We'll keep working on it.
Listen, Dyson and Costco are my two, all-time faves. If we could get them to sponsor us, that would be amazing. It may be 5 to 10 years from now, but you got to plant seeds, right?
Hey, nothing will grow without them. All right. Well, we'll work on it.
Thank you.
Tim, can you do a little intro for us about our amazing guest, Robin Laird?
Yeah, Robin is just a superstar on so many levels, and I think people are really going to enjoy hearing from her. Hearing about her experience. She is the consummate, community builder. So she just dedicates so much time and energy and talent to supporting people around her. And I think she's just an amazing and inspirational woman, and I'm really excited for her to come on. And even better, she's a Perrysburg local, just like you and
There
I,
you
man.
go.
Yeah.
There you go.
So let's bring her in.
So today's guest, we have Robin Laird. Robin brings a lot of different experiences and so forth to the table, and I'm so excited to hear more about them. Full disclosure, we both know Robin from Perrysburg, Ohio, so she is a Perrysburg. I don't know, are you technically a native, Robin, or you just live there?
I moved there when I was 5.
Oh,
So
you're
I
a
say,
native.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
you're a
yeah.
native for sure. Okay, cool. So if there's some familiarity there, that's why. And we're so looking forward to this discussion. So Tim, if you want to get us going,
Yeah,
welcome, Robin.
This is awesome,
Thank
Robin.
you.
And I want to point out that we have, even though the three of us are all from Perrysburg, Robin is currently in California. I am currently in New Jersey, and Trav, you are currently in Ohio. So we are
That's right.
covering the country.
Oh, yeah.
The-
Sea to shining sea.
That's
That's
right.
it.
Exactly.
That's it. This is a very domestically friendly call, if that's the right word to use. So Robin, it's so awesome to have you. I mean, obviously, we know so much about all the incredible things that you do. This season is specifically focused on all of the busyness that people bring into their lives and how they engage themselves and what brings them meaning and passion. And when we thought about you, we just thought about your consistent engagement and involvement with nonprofits, with supporting community wealth and health, wealth, well-being, all of those components that you're such an amazing advocate for. So maybe you could start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, what you're up to now, your background, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so, well, I guess probably if you want to find out what my whole catalyst was for what I do is I was raised with a brother who had Down syndrome. And, he was born back in the 60s when the doctors said, don't even look at him, just send him off, put him in an institution, forget about him. And my parents were not of that mindset by any means. And so I was raised with Brian. My parents were very heavily involved in Wood County Board of DD. They were on the board. My dad was one of the first people. They went door to door to talk about building group homes. So my dad was on the ground floor of that, got those started. And so my whole life has revolved around volunteering. My parents were big volunteers, giving back, being involved in communities of, marginalized folks, whether it was people living in poverty or with disabilities or whatever. So I was raised there. I ended up going to Bowling Green State University and got my degree in, first it was in special ed, and then several years later got my master's in school administration. So I taught for probably 15 years and then ended up becoming the assistant principal at the junior high. And I did that for 14. And all through this time, I was still doing a lot of volunteer work. So when my girls were like in sports, I was like one of the team moms. And then, I was on the elementary, parents organization in the junior high, and I was after prom chair and all that kind of stuff. So I've always kind of had that in my background. And then when I retired, I actually went back for like a little stint at Woodland Elementary. And I was there a couple hours a day just helping out. And I also started working with a young man who has some significant disabilities. I've been working with him now for 10 years. He is my heart next to my family. And I've since then gone back into doing a lot of volunteer work with kids and adults with disabilities. So most of my board work right now involves organizations that support that community. And here I am. And now I'm in San Diego helping with my grandkids for a couple months.
That's great.
You're everywhere and covering so many different areas, which is so amazing.
Seriously.
And so it's interesting how, I want to go back to those early days when you talked about your dad and his advocacy. I mean, what were the options for Brian if and what came of his efforts?
Well, it was interesting because when Brian first started school, there was a gentleman, his name was Merle. I can still see him. And actually, as you probably remember, Tim, I grew up in the house that was across the street from your house on Fifth Street, which obviously you guys weren't living there then, but Merle pulled up every morning and he picked up there were like 3 kids in Perrysburg that went to school, and he drove them down to, it was actually the 3rd floor of the old junior high in Bowling Green. So Wood Lane was not, that was the Wood Lane of the day. And they didn't really have a solid building until maybe 1970-ish. Um, and so my dad was part of that whole group that said, this is not how we're going to have our kids. Our kids need to be in a school. They need to have residential options. My parents had always had the mindset of, Robin's going to go to college and move out of the house. Brian's going to go and move out of the house as well. So actually the Portage group homes, which are still in existence today, and there's a group home in downtown Bowling Green. There's a million group homes right now that Wood County DD runs, or Wood County Residential runs, but those were the first 2. So those actually were started from that group of parents who said, our kids need somewhere to be. We recognize that we're not going to be with them forever, and we need somebody to take care of them, and we need to have our hands in what happens to them. So unfortunately, my little brother died when I was a senior in high school, and so that never came to fruition for Brian, but I actually worked there all through college. I worked at the group home in Portage. So it's kind of cool that I kind of got to see that all come full circle.
Mm-hmm.
And I had watched my parents work on that programming and everything else. So yeah, it was cool.
Robin, this is amazing. I did not know this connection, but my uncle actually lived in Portage at that home.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, David Dorn.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I know him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I didn't realize that.
I didn't either. What a cool connection. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's a great place. It's the founding of that was obviously extremely influential for so many different people.
Yep.
That's really cool. That's great.
Oh yeah. It's a great. I was just talking to somebody from there this morning. So yeah, it's
Very
cool.
cool.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yep.
It's so interesting for me to hear this and to think about the fact that these homes didn't exist. Right. I mean, for Trav and I, they were always sort of there, and that's such a part of our society today, and it's so important, right? It's so necessary. So, but sure, everything has to start somewhere, and it's really, I'm just so inspired by your father and his commitment. I mean, both of your parents, really, and it makes so much sense in terms of who you are as well and where that drive comes from. It's just really amazing. I mean, do you think that you would be any different if your parents, if Brian weren't in the picture, or if your parents weren't as like the energy that they put towards this was clearly it inspired you, no?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I am absolutely the person I am today because of, I've got the bullheadedness of my dad and I've got, the kind of, I can also kind of see all sides like my mom could. And so, I can try and be the peacemaker sometimes, which was always my mom's role in the family. And yeah, I mean, I really do. I think those people are my heart.
So you've touched on, I mean, you touched earlier when you were first sharing a little bit more about your experience, about the many different areas where you're, providing care and assistance, where you're helping to support communities. What are some of the takeaways that you've learned through your role as someone who's, come in to support and help move things forward?
Well, I think what's interesting to me is being so involved in this community, I forget that there are people out there who have zero exposure or knowledge or anything about that kind of stuff. And so, like people say, oh, I never knew that or whatever. And to me, I've just been so engaged in it for how many years. So I think that there is a real opportunity for people to learn more about all the communities, like the folks that you've worked with, Tim, and I've learned a lot from just watching what you do in your different roles of things. And I'm like, oh, I never knew that happened, or what a cool idea for, a program or whatever. So I think that is the biggest thing, is because I think, when you get on a board or you become a volunteer in an organization, you're so engaged just in like that little circle that you don't realize how many people outside of that circle don't understand it. And I think that is a huge opportunity for all of us. I think it's obviously growing now with social media and just the different means of communication, but I think that's a huge opportunity for all of us.
And what would you say to folks that are listening to this and would be more on the other end of it, where they're like, I know nothing about this, but I'm inspired by hearing this. Like, where would they even start? What would you suggest they do?
Well, depending on, I mean, the beautiful thing about, there's not a lot of great things about our government, but some of the good things are that there's, there's federal law that makes sure that folks with disabilities have support, and that's really cool as far as like schools and residential and everything. I would say the best bet for somebody is to just, every state in the country has a organization of developmental disabilities. So like the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, the New Jersey Department, California, whatever. And if they're truly interested in that, that would be their first step, is to just Google, California Board of Disabilities or whatever, or their local organization. And just go in and Google like adults with disabilities, and programming, and you would get millions of hits. Local schools always have some kind of programming. Public schools always have, they are federally mandated to have programming for kids of all abilities. So, a public school would be a great option to look into. But if you just put in developmental disabilities, you're going to find them for sure.
Very
for
cool.
sure.
Robin, when you in your role as a mom and as a grandmom, and when you were working full time as well, either as an educator or an administrator, how did those close to you? I mean, it's a lot to balance, right? So you have your commitments to so many different populations of people. How did those close to you respond to your commitment to these volunteer efforts or these board efforts? And did you face any challenges in sort of balancing all of that?
Well, I had the great benefit of having a husband who was also an educator. So his schedule was one that he could be home after school. I was a lot like your mom, Tim, when I was getting my master's, as I was, coming home from work, going straight to, university classes, whatever. So I had that. I also had the blessing of having my mother, who was watching my kids, and she came to my house every day. And I still, to this day, even though it's years and years and years later that she's, been working with the girls, is that I never could have done any of this without that support of my husband and my mom. And honestly, my kids went to a lot of those opportunities. They did some of that volunteer work with me. And, it makes me really happy when I see that they're still engaging in that kind of stuff. They'll still, they'll volunteer for something else, or, they'll talk about, having a student that or a young man that they run into who has disabilities or whatever, and they're still, I kind of drug them along. They didn't really have an option for a lot of that stuff. It was like, you're coming with me, we're going down here, or we're going to this, we're volunteering here. And so that kind of, it just became part of our world. And that's kind of how they are. And it's funny because now I work with this young man who's obviously back home in Perrysburg, and I try and FaceTime with him every day. And so now, like, my grandkids know him. So we'll FaceTime, and, Barrett will say, Michael, do you want to sing the Daisy song? Because he knows that's one of Michael's favorite songs. And, so I love that they're, being engaged in that kind of stuff as well, whether they like it or not.
No, I think it's so great. Sorry, Trav. How old were your kids when you started to get them involved?
Oh, geez. Well, I would say probably like toddler age, I would think, like if we, yeah, like I'm saying, they got drug along. They probably don't remember it, but they went to stuff, and we volunteered, or, if we were even like at their school functions, if there was stuff going on, or we would volunteer it. Like I remember, what was it? Relay for Life. We used to do that Relay for Life in Perrysburg, and my kids would always come and help volunteer at that. And they were both the girls were early involved in scouting, like Girl Scouts and Brownies and that kind of stuff initially, and so they did volunteer work through that as well. So yeah,
it's a really busy schedule for everybody involved. That's impressive.
Obviously, Cummings.
Yeah, right. Obviously, schedules are an obstacle no matter what your pursuits, but what other challenges and obstacles have you faced over the years in doing all of this? I'm sure they might be too numerous to mention, but you seem to be handling them with great grace.
I would think some of the things would just be, and it not would necessarily personally for my schedule or anything, but running into people who are not the least bit interested in volunteering, or the least bit interested in doing for others. And I was not raised that way. My husband was not raised that way. Our kids were not raised that way. I just don't understand that. And so it takes a lot of me to kind of step back and say, okay, that is their loss. And I know people that just, it's all about them and it's not anything about doing for others. And so that's a challenge. I try and give them a little grace because I think maybe they weren't in a situation where they ever had that opportunity, and kind of try and pull them along a little bit. But I think that's been my biggest challenge, is not understanding how other people cannot want to give back and do for others. And whether it's financially or with time or with materials or, whatever, it's just, I wasn't raised that way, and my kids weren't either. So that's not our world.
I could see that for sure.
Right.
You're definitely of the ilk that everyone can give something, be it whatever it may be.
And when I was executive director for Hannah's Socks for 8 or 9 years, and when I did that, I worked a lot with kids, and I went to their classrooms, and I talked a lot about giving back. And I'd say, you don't have to have $10 to donate or socks to donate, but you could read a book to a lonely neighbor or go play a card game, and I talk to kids a lot about how it's not what you have material wise that you can give, but you can give of your time, of your talents. You can make placemats for the neighbor next door who doesn't have anybody to eat dinner with or something like that. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I love everything that you're sharing. I'm so inspired. I've been thinking a lot about as well for my kids right now. What you're talking about and touching on, Robin, is so important. This idea of service, right? Of acknowledging those around us and doing what we can to support their well-being and how that enhances our well-being as a result as well. I'm just so inspired by the fact that you got your kids engaged in that at such an early age, and it's really making me want to do more. I've been thinking a lot about it, but I haven't figured out how to really take the next step. But I need to do that, and this conversation is helping me think about that, so thank you.
You're welcome. Well, and I think, too, you have to find something your kids are interested in, like if animals or reading. And I will be the first one to say, our schedules were busy. I mean, my girls were in gymnastics and dance and volleyball, and, it might have been a Saturday morning or, a Sunday for an hour somewhere. It wasn't like 10 hours a week of volunteering,
Right,
but
sure.
whenever an opportunity arose, we did it.
Sure.
So.
Can I ask you, Robin, when you think back on all of your experiences, and I'm sure you've seen and experienced just a whole, I can't even imagine what you've been through, and probably some very complicated times and some beautiful times. Is there one person that sort of stands out to you when you think back on all the individuals that you met through your time serving others, building community, that you could share with us?
Wow. I would probably say Brian, my little brother. I mean, of all people, he taught me, one of the things that I think we lose sometimes when we're working with folks with disabilities is we forget that they can do a lot more than we might have an expectation of. And Brian was treated like I was. Brian had rules, Brian had curfew, but so he didn't get away with anything. And I have always kind of respected my parents for that. And I just think he taught me so much to, how to be compassionate, how to understand folks that struggle, I think the biggest thing is celebrating small accomplishments, like super small accomplishments. And it might be somebody learning to, use a fork, and things that we totally take for granted is stuff that, I think we need. He really taught me that riding a bike to most kids is no big deal, but Brian was probably 12 or 13 and he was riding one of those big 3-wheelers, but that was a huge accomplishment for him. And I see that every day now with this young man I work with, like something that's not a big deal to us is huge for him. So yeah, definitely my brother. I would not be the same person I am today without Brian.
That's awesome.
That's so great.
How about, I'm going to just switch topics or switch gears a little bit here. Have you ever found yourself, when you're looking back on all your experiences, any experience that you thought to yourself when it was over, well, that was pretty crazy. I can't believe I did that. Anything stand out?
Anything at the
You know what?
Cummings
I will
house?
tell you, I will say that my work when I was at the group home in Portage, got pretty crazy. The house I worked in was all adult men. I think there were 6 or 8 of them, and they all had very intense behavior needs. And there was all kinds of behavior. We had one gentleman who had like Herculean strength when he was upset, and he could like throw dressers. And, and I learned, and I'm not as tiny as Luann, but I'm not a big person by any means. And I mean, I learned to block a dresser. I mean, I had some crazy experiences, but all of them were great. And I learned from every one of them. So yeah, I would probably say my work at the group homes was probably some of the things I walked out and said, wow, I can't, I did that. And I'm glad I did, because it was something else. So, yeah.
I could imagine venturing into some uncomfortable territory at times, which is,
Oh, yeah.
but you learn a heck of a lot, right, about yourself and others in that moment.
Absolutely.
And how do you keep your sanity? I mean, you're such a busy person. You have so much going on all the time. What sort of tips or tricks would you share with our listeners in terms of how you've been able to maintain balance?
I probably would say that I always have to think about the people I'm serving, or the work I'm doing is for people who have less than I do, whether it's abilities or finances or whatever. And I think that is what keeps me going. I work on a couple boards, and we're really struggling with some, not finances, but like staffing and board members and that kind of stuff. And I keep saying, I'm not giving up, because the folks that we're serving need this. And so I think that is what, when I'm ready to just like throw in the towel on something, I'm thinking, no, because there's people counting on us doing the work. And I think that is what keeps me doing it, for sure. And I'm not going to say I'm not exhausted and I'm not frustrated. And your mom and I have these conversations, where we just say, okay, this is how can we fix this kind of stuff? So, I think it's just, you just have to keep remembering that the work you're doing is for the good and for folks who have less. So
maybe a little bit of that stubbornness in there you were talking about too.
Oh yeah. That I'm not seeing in my granddaughter.
And Robin, I'm hearing from you too, the importance of, having people close to you that you can share these experiences with, and the support that they provide and getting through it together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, after a frustrating meeting or whatever, I've got a couple other board members that I can send a text to and say, oh my gosh. And then they text me back, and,
the power of community.
That's right.
I do have one gripe to pick with you, if that's okay. When you served as, you were the vice principal, right, in the junior high?
Yes.
And I think I bribed you to get rid of Trav. I think I put like $20 in an envelope and said, please expel him. You did not.
Don't remember that at all.
No?
Well, thank you for ignoring it.
That was probably Tim Walzer.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
People mix us up all the time.
Well, he got my $20 then.
Yeah. He earned it putting up with you.
If I could just say real quick, Robin, I mean, I'm just, I shared already, but I really am just so impressed and inspired by what you do and your commitment. And the word like volunteer just it's not adequate enough for me. I mean, you are a community builder. You bring people together, you enrich people's lives, and it's really motivating on so many levels. I'm so grateful to know you.
Well, thank you. But there's a lot of people like me. I mean, I'm not, I'm nothing special. There's some people that do a whole lot more than I do, but I appreciate that. Thank you. And I love it. It's what I do.
That's so great. Robin, thank you so much for your time. I know you've got grandkids who are probably waiting in the wings to play with you, but thank you so much, not only for taking the time here, but sharing your story and being such a guiding light in all of this. And, maybe when we all need a little bit of a glimmer of hope, we can look to Robin and the people like Robin who are helping, like we talked about earlier, look for the helpers. So Thank you for
I've
being
got
one of
one
the
thing
helpers.
for you guys.
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum, he's a kook,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
the Jeff. But I saw an interview with him, and it's probably when he was doing his whole Wicked press tour and everything. But he was talking about a quote because somebody's talking to him about all the stuff he does, and it's a quote from George Bernard Shaw, the playwright, which Trav, I'm sure he's kind of part of your world. But anyway, it's called A Splendid Torch. I encourage every person who's watching this or listening to this to find this this quote by George Bernard Shaw. But anyway, it's kind of a long quote, but the thing that I was reading it to my husband, I said, this is it. This is me. That one of the last things is, I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. Isn't that cool? So I think, look it up, read it, live it, whatever. But yeah, I think it's talks about, I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. So
I love it.
there you go. If you're a scholar of George Bernard Shaw, then you'll.
There you go.
Yeah.
I see Tim getting ready to look it up right now and start reading a play.
Yeah. I wish I could find my phone. I'd be right on it.
It'll read it to you slowly. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are great.
That's such a
words.
great quote. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Words to live by. I love it.
Yeah, no kidding. So,
Well, Robin, thank you so much. We
thank
really
you, guys.
appreciate
I'm
it.
so honored to talk to you. I can't wait.
it's all ours.
I love this podcast. I just think it's great. I told more people about it. So I hope your listenership is growing because I'll take full credit for it.
I was going to say, it's all you if it is.
And your moms. It's all the moms telling people.
That's right.
It's very big in Perrysburg.
I don't doubt it. Your demographics probably kind of.
Yeah, a little bit nil, but that's all good. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
You're so welcome.
Stay well, Robin. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys.
All right, there you go. Robin Laird, thank you so much for joining us. I think everybody can glean at least a little something out of all that various different selflessness. And we obviously not only want to highlight, but thank you for everything you've done for our community and the community at large. So thank you very much. I have to be honest with you. I did not realize, I knew, she enjoys such a good reputation, like you said, as a community builder, but I did not realize the amount, just an absolute lifetime of service, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think I think that's a great point, Trav. And I think the other thing about her is that, and one of the things that really inspired and motivated me, and I hope I can act on this, is what she did to get her kids involved at such a young age. And to start to kind of just institute this mentality or spirit, whatever you want to call it, of service to one another. Because, Robin is having a tremendous impact and will continue to do so, but she's also laying the groundwork for generations to come, right? Sure. By getting her family involved and by serving as such a shining example. I just think that's awesome. But I also, as a parent, it's something I've been thinking a lot about recently, and I've really struggled to actually enact, figuring out ways to get my kids engaged in something. And to her point, though, it's not that complicated, right? I think I'm probably overcomplicating it, and I need to just take a step, and so that's on me.
Well, I think the thing is too, obviously she does things at such a top level, with a lot of things as being a board member and so forth, as I know you do too, but it's one of those things where it doesn't have to be, she reminded me in this interview that it doesn't necessarily have to be that big. You know what I mean? It's like, you can donate something of you, be it your time in an afternoon or be it long-term or, financially or whatever you might be able to offer. You are always able to offer something. Yeah. So to your point about I should really do more. It's like, well, how do you do anything? You start small, right? Do something. So I hear you. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, thank you, Robin. Very inspirational. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that just about wraps up episode 202. Thank you so much for joining us on the Tim and Trav podcast.
Yeah, thanks everybody. We got some more exciting guests headed your way, so stay tuned.
Tim and Travis on the mic. Talking life and what's alike. Middle age, it's quite the ride. Finding joy and chasing pride. Career dreams and daily grind. Funny moments that we find. Letting go of yesterday. Making paths along the way. Middle age. Middle age mayhem, breaking free. Finding out who we can be. Laughing, learning all the time. Tim and Travis in their prime. Every step a brand new plan. Older, wiser, still we stand. Navigating through the years. Sharing stories, laughs and cheers. Middle-aged mayhem, breaking free. Finding out who we can be. Laughing, learning all the time. Tim and Travis in their prime. Every step a brand new plan. Older, wiser, still we stand. Navigating through the years. Sharing stories, laughs and cheers. Middle age, enjoying the fun. Middle age has just begun. Tim and Travis lead the way. Every episode will slay.
And a lot of it is very incriminating. I'm just going to leave it at that. You can take a moment. I'm better looking, but you're much wiser. Tell me when.
Let's do it for sure.
I mean,
Thanks, Tim.
smooth.